Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Spiral's podcast. I'm here today with a co-worker of mine who I've known for, over a year now. Well over a year, in fact. We've been working together for quite a while. Alison, and she's part of our team at Spiral, and we brought her on here today to talk a little bit about mindfulness because, she's kind of our resident expert on mindfulness, I believe. Hello, Alison.
Oh, hi there, Sol. Great to be with you today. I'm feeling a little nervous actually because I've never done a podcast before, so I'm having those anxious thoughts about, will I stumble over my words, or I'll say something stupid or something like that. But we're here to talk about mindfulness, so I guess what I'm modelling here is that I can be aware of those thoughts and feelings running through my mind at the moment. Well, what if I say something silly, or what if I get this wrong? But it's not stopping me from being here. I'm still turning up, and this is perhaps something that, as we talk about mindfulness today, we can think of its benefits. It's about how we can stay present in the present moment and still do the things that we want to do and achieve the things we want to achieve without our difficult thoughts and feelings getting in the way.
Awesome. So why have I invited you here today? Why do you think? Why have I asked you to do the podcast on mindfulness? Why would you say that?
well, I suppose so. As part of my role here at Spiral, I've been developing some training and working with our volunteer teams to equip them with knowledge and skills to be able to work with our young people. And one of those skills that we incorporate into that is to develop mindfulness awareness, and to be able to feel confident that I could deliver a little mindfulness, a few mindfulness exercises with a young person and feel comfortable doing that, because if it's something we're not familiar with, then it might feel a bit strange to us at the beginning. So I've been working with Spiral over the last 3 or 4 years just to get the service up and running with Marianne, and mindfulness is a very integral part of how we approach things. So it's great to be able to have this conversation with you today, so just as we think about preventing the effects of bullying and how mindfulness might be one strategy tool that can help us to overcome those negative effects.
So we're here today to talk a little bit about mindfulness, right, Alison, and things that you can do to self-help, mostly focusing around kind of the bullying aspect and, ways to self-help if you are, receiving bullying and you're kind of in that kind of space in your life. Because it's important, we talk a lot about on this podcast, things that can come out of that and like outcomes of bullying and what happens, like the negative things, but it's also important to talk about things that you can do to avoid that. So that's what we're here to do today, just a whole episode on self-help.
Yeah.
Mostly focusing on mindfulness, really, because I think that's one of your kind of specialisation areas, Alison. I think you quite enjoy mindfulness, right?
I do, so yeah. Mindfulness is something that I've found extremely helpful in my own life, and now we have such an awareness from the neuroscience and the brain scans that give it lots of evidence that this is something that can really help us. So I'm a big fan of mindful practice.
Yeah. Before we dive too far into it, though, just for everyone out there who doesn't maybe know what mindfulness is, because before I met you, Alison, I didn't know what mindfulness was. I was first introduced to it on one of our first team meetings when I joined Spiral as a volunteer. So to everyone out there, what kind of is mindfulness? What is it in a general sense?
Well, a very simple definition might be that we are paying more attention to the present moment. And that might be to your own thoughts and feelings, to the world around you. And that by being more present, as in we're not thinking about the future, we're not dwelling on the past, but we're actually here in the present moment, that improves our mental well-being. And in a good definition is from a chap called Professor Mark Williams, who's the former director of the Oxford Mindfulness Centre. And he says that mindfulness means knowing directly what is going on inside and outside ourselves, moment by moment.
Yeah, I think that describes it very well. That chap sounds quite smart. No, yes,
definition. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think mindfulness is quite important. I think being able to know what's going on with you in the here and now is really important, because I think for a lot of people, you can kind of go through life not really knowing what you're feeling and how you are in the present moment. I think that's a thing that a lot of people go through. I know it's something that I go through quite often.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, you don't know how you feel in the moment. And so I'll introduce you guys to the first time I did mindfulness. I can't remember what exactly mindfulness technique we did, Alison, but it was in a Teams meeting with you, and I think it might have been the river one, where it was mindfulness with the river.
Stream.
The leaves on the stream.
Yeah.
Sit comfortably in your chair, with your feet on the ground if you can, and your back straight, but not too straight, sitting against the chair. If you wish, close your eyes, or have a heavy-lidded gaze, maybe looking at one spot on the ground. Now imagine you are sitting on the bank of a stream, and that there are leaves flowing past. The stream and the leaves can look any way you like to imagine. Notice a thought that comes into your mind, and imagine placing it on a leaf and letting it flow on. Notice each thought. Imagine placing it on a leaf and let it float on. If your mind begins to wander, just notice that, and return your focus to noticing the thoughts that come to mind, and imagine putting them on a leaf and let them float on. If your thoughts stop, just imagine watching the stream until the next one comes along. It doesn't matter if they are good or bad thoughts. Just notice them and imagine placing them on a leaf and let them float away. If they hang around, just notice that. Don't force the speed that they float away on. Sometimes the leaves that pass are ones that might grab our attention for some reason. Sitting on the bankside, we could notice that attention-grabbing leaf. Let it go, and watch and wait for the next leaf that comes along. The aim of the skill is to simply notice that our thoughts are like leaves on a stream, always moving on. Sometimes we think a little, or we think a lot. Sometimes we get stuck on thoughts that grab our attention. But all our thoughts come and go, even worry thoughts or sad thoughts. Spending a few more moments just watching your thoughts and placing them on a leaf and letting them go. And when you're ready, begin to open your eyes and bring yourself back into the room. What was it like to watch your thoughts go by? What did you notice?
Yeah, so that's a really good exercise, Sol, that we've used lots with young people that we've worked with here at Spiral. In fact, I was doing that yesterday with a young person, and at the end of it, they said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I feel much calmer and more relaxed than I was before." So, this that practice of letting go of our thoughts. This idea that if we practice mindfulness, we begin to recognize and notice our thoughts and recognize the patterns of thinking that we might have, and that we're actually able to not be quite so caught up in them. So our thoughts and feelings don't define us.
Yeah.
We can have our thoughts and feelings. They're just things that we experience, but they're not all of us. And so this practice, Leaves on the Stream, is a good good one that we introduce young people to here at Spiral as a simple way of getting this idea across of watching thoughts, noticing thoughts, and letting them pass by on a leaf down a stream.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that was the first mindfulness I was ever introduced to. I mean, from my experience, I found it, the first time I did it, I found it quite, maybe, I'm not sure awkward's the right word, but I found it kind of, maybe even slightly embarrassing. I thought it was quite odd. I'd never experienced anything like that before. But the more I practice mindfulness and the more that I introduce it in my one-to-one sessions with young people, the more I realise that it's really useful, and it's not embarrassing. And a lot of the young people I did it with, we get a lot of positive feedback when we do mindfulness exercises. I think we get a lot of people saying that it's very calming. It helps them kind of like you were saying, think more about the moment.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of young people actually go and not just introduce it into their own lives, but go and tell their friends about it, which I think is really awesome, because I think it's a really wonderful practice that can help a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot more awareness about it now, isn't there, in our society? And it's kind of moved from being something a few people might do if they're interested in that kind of thing, to a widespread practice that the NHS recommend as something that's effective for helping with symptoms of anxiety and depression or stress and pain management. So it's a widely kind of accepted practice now, with scientific evidence that backs it up as to how it affects our body, brain and nervous system. So it can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's coming from personal experience, right? I mean, we can both attest to the fact that it can be very helpful. And there's so many different types of mindfulness as well. The leaves on the stream, that's not the only one. Some of my personal favourite ones are just focused around breathing and controlling your breathing, the ones that I tend to do. And a lot of the ones that I do at Spiral is like box breathing. I think that one's really good. It's a really simple one that's quite easy for people to understand.
Absolutely, yeah. Very easy to just do, and you could do it anywhere. You could do it just before you're going into school in the morning, or if in class if something's making someone feel a bit nervous or worried. They're very easy things to do that just have a calming, sort of soothing effect on the anxious thoughts or feelings that someone might be experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is that, I mean, one simple Google search of mindfulness, you will find hundreds, possibly thousands, possibly tens of thousands different exercises that you can follow through. There's loads of like audios on YouTube, like the one I just played before. There's loads and loads of audios that you can just play through and listen through. And it's kind of like sports in the sense that if you dislike football, you might like, hockey. If you dislike the leaves on the stream one that we just played, then you might like another mindfulness activity. And it's about trying to find the ones that work best for you, because there's no one mindfulness exercise fits all, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's many different techniques and strategies that you can experiment with and try. And often, it's not a cure-all for everything. There's other things that we need to be doing as well that are going to support our well-being and health. Things like exercise, for example, but certain types of exercise can really complement the mindful activities better than others. So things like stretching exercises or yoga or Tai Chi that are a bit more rhythmical and slow.
Yeah.
So that's something that we always encourage. How much exercise are you getting? Are you out in nature, connecting with nature a little bit?
Yeah.
As good strategies to support overall well-being, as well as relationships and connecting with people, and having a good diet and eating well.
Yeah, a good diet's a really important one, I think. I mean, they're all really important. They all kind of come together to help each other, right? And if you can get them all nailed down, or even just a few of them nailed down, then it's going to make some improvements for sure. But I mean, diet for me, I think, is a really good one because, I mean, for me personally, I've just started another job outside of Spiral. I've been talking to a lot of people because it's in a Waitrose, right? I'm sure all of you who listen to this probably know what a Waitrose is. But because it's kind of like this environment with lots of food, I end up having a lot of conversations with my co-workers about diet. And a lot of the people I speak to, they have tried many, many different diets, and they tell me how, I tried veganism for a bit, and I found that it had this effect, and this effect, and this effect, and I felt weaker, and I felt more stronger, or I had more energy, and stuff like that. So it's made me really realise that diet does have an effect on your body, and in turn on your mind as well, because if you are on a diet that doesn't sit well with you and you're not getting as much energy or strength as you could be, then that's going to affect your mind, then that's going to affect the state of your mind and your body, and it all works together, right, into this big kind of like circle of things that you can do to self-help.
That's right. So it's amazing how it's all linked together, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, it was a holistic thing. All these little parts, these parts all make up the whole. And if we've got them all in there, then we're going to be in a better state of well-being. But yeah, food and mood, definitely a connection between our diet and how we feel and our emotions and our mental state.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying about exercises as well, and I agree. There are some ones that even might be a form of mindfulness in and of themselves, right? Like some forms of yoga, and like you were saying, some martial arts. I know a lot of martial arts. Karate specifically has like katas, which are kind of like rhythmically going through the motions of different moves, and you string them all together, and it's very calming. And you can even do them along with some mindfulness breathing exercises, right? And you can combine it all together into this big, bundle of things that you can do to self-help.
Absolutely, Sol. And even if you're not a sporty person, I know on your last podcast we were talking about sport, weren't we? And but if you're not really into sports, then just going for a walk, you can go for a mindful walk. And how you do a mindful walk is you use all your senses. So you consciously take notice about what you can see and what you can hear, what you're in touch with. Can you feel the feet you feel your feet under the ground, and what's that feel like? So a lot of mindfulness. Well, one of the important skills in mindfulness is to develop a connection with our bodies a lot more through what we're sensing and what we're feeling. So using our senses, what we can see, hear, smell, touch, and taste. Yeah. And that can be something you can do anywhere, just by simply whatever you're doing right now, just noticing the sense of yourself sitting in the chair that you're in, or noticing what's in the room around you, or noticing anything you can hear. And that all helps just keep you in the present, what's actually going on right here, right now, in and around you.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, Spiral's predominantly, we're a charity focused around bullying and preventing the effects of bullying, and mindfulness does tie into this in a way, because I mean, everybody's bullying experience is different in their own way, right? But some of the more common, feelings or effects that bullying can have are things like anxiousness, anxiety, forms of depression, things like that. And we were saying that mindfulness can work to help with that, right? I mean, especially anxiousness, I find. Yeah,
absolutely, Sol. And I think when we think about bullying experiences, what we could perhaps be aware of is that bullying can be quite a traumatic experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And if it is a traumatic experience, then it might send our body and brain into a sort of a stress response.
Yep.
And that's where we're in a heightened state all the time. We're kind of on alert, looking out all the time, wondering what's going to happen next. Is it going to happen again? And so that it's like our nervous system goes on to this full alert. And so where mindfulness can help you as a young person is it's like putting the brake on that nervous system. So it just calms it down a bit, soothes it, slows it all down, and brings you to a bit more of a restful state, perhaps. But like all things, it's a skill. So we do have to practice it. It's, you wouldn't get really good at playing the violin if you only did it for 5 minutes, would you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like all skills, mindfulness is something to think about. Okay, I'm going to give this a go, and I'm going to practice this every day. And maybe I just start with Leaves on the Stream, and I practice that on a daily basis, where I've just noticed all the difficult thoughts I'm having around being bullied and how it's made me feel about myself. We just notice those thoughts, place them on the leaves and pass them down the stream. And in time, if we stick at it, those thoughts and feelings become perhaps a little less intense for us.
Yeah, I would like to just mention that obviously if you are, being bullied, I mean, in any environment, not necessarily just in school, I mean, even in work or in your sports clubs, then obviously this isn't the way to fix it. It's just a way that can help you, right? You should always go and try and tell, a teacher or whoever's in charge, and you should tell maybe your parents or your family and seek out other means of stopping or preventing the bullying from happening. But like we're saying, it's a way of preventing the effects, I think, and that's a lot of what Spiral's about.
Yeah.
And we're saying, we were saying we use it a lot with young people, but it's a skill that you can take with you for your whole life, right? Like, even not with bullying, like if you're feeling anxious going into, your final exams or your first job interview, or even your second job interview or your 10th job interview, right? You can do some mindfulness activities to, like we said, bring down some of that anxiousness.
Yeah,
and bring you back into the moment.
It's definitely a skill for life, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I didn't really learn this until later in life, and and I guess we didn't have the science so much to support it. But I guess the other thing worth mentioning is it's not a new thing. Mindfulness, it's been around for many years, usually in a lot of our spiritual traditions, whether that's Buddhist or Christian or in various faiths. You can find the practice of meditation, which is a way to achieve mindfulness. So it's something that I think, I wish I'd discovered this when I was much younger.
Yeah.
And I'd been practicing it for 30 or 40 years rather than 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're here to do, right? I think if you could take something away from this podcast, it's to be just to give it a go. Even if you don't like, the Leaves on the Stream, you might like some of the others, like we've been saying. And it's just about trying it. And if you don't like any mindfulness techniques, then that's fine. It's clearly not for you. But it's definitely something that will help a lot of people. And even if one person picks mindfulness up after this podcast, then I think we've done a good job.
Yeah. And it's maybe worth saying, Sol, about how it kind of works to change your brain a little bit. We're actually training our mind here, and there's a particular part in your frontal cortex, which is your thinking brain, that actually gets bigger when you practice these skills, and it has an effect on being able to calm down another part of your brain, which is called the amygdala, which is the part of us that gets triggered very emotionally about things. So we actually are really, as we practice these skills, which, like you said, so when you first start, it can be a bit strange, a bit weird.
It can be,
what's this doing? I don't quite get the point of this. Don't really understand what this is doing. But it is having an effect on our whole mind, brain structure, and the way in which we function, and it can help us to manage much better in life.
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much everything you said there. But I mean, it's been a wonderful little chat with you, Alison, and I thank you for coming on this episode of the podcast. It's been nice.
Thank you, Sol. I've really enjoyed speaking with you today. It's been a new experience for me to do a podcast. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope we can do another one sometime.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. So For everyone listening in, obviously you can follow our YouTube or our Facebook or our Twitter to get updates whenever we post another episode. We're going to try and keep them monthly on the 5th of every month. That's when we're going to try and upload them. So make sure you're subscribing, following, joining our page, etc. so you're notified of when they release. And we'll see you in the next episode.